Hi, everybody. We are back for another play of the day. Today, we are going to be looking at The BACCHAE by Euripides. This play crazy. It's insane. I love it. All right. For any of you that happened to watch the one I posted yesterday, The BACCHAE, I am sorry. I don't know what happened to the sound. So I'm reshooting it today, which is great because I'm having a better hair day. So I'd much rather be remembered like this. So, we are in the city-state of Thebes. It is run by a king named King Cadmus. He has four daughters. He has Agave, Atenore, Ino, and Semele. And Semele is his favorite. She's the youngest and she's so sweet and she's so pretty. And I mean, obviously, you can see she has the best hairstyle and smiley face form. And Semele is so beautiful that Zeus comes down from Mount Olympus and rapes her. And she becomes pregnant with a demigod. But Agave, Atenore, and Ino, who are not particularly happy about the fact that Semele is clearly the favorite because no one wants to race for second place, all see opportunity here. And they're like, oh. So the perfect one is not so perfect anymore. And they go to their dad and they're like, you know that whole thing about Zeus raped her and she's pregnant with a demigod? Dad, that's a lie. She's just seeing some guy in town and she's like sneaking off. And now she's pregnant and she's trying to cover up for it. And now she has brought shame on your entire house. And Cadmus goes to his best friend Tiresias. Tiresias appears in multiple plays because he's this really important figure in Greek mythology. He is blind, but if he touches you, he can see your future. In fact, all of the kings would like bring him in when a new baby was born and they would touch the baby and say like, oh, he's going to be a magnificent king because Tiresias can see the future. So he goes to Tiresias and he's like, my daughter is lying. Here, like, she's my favorite, but she's off seeing this boy. And he's like, well, she's brought shame on the entire town of Thebes. You've got to throw her out. So Cadmus throws her out. And Zeus sees all this happen from Mount Olympus and he's really mad. So he takes his trusty lightning bolt and he kills Semele, the one person here who has done nothing wrong. All of her sisters are awful, but Semele is not awful. But now she's dead. So then Zeus takes the unborn baby out of her lifeless form and he cuts his thigh open and he puts the baby in there and sews it up until the baby is ready to be born, which is how we know it's a god because that is not how biology works. So eventually the baby is born and his name is Dionysus, or also Bacchus. He's called Dionysus in the play, but it's important to know that he's also called Bacchus because this play is called the BACCHAE. I don't know why they didn't just call him Bacchus. It would make it easier to teach. However, Cadmus also has his oldest daughter, Agave. And Agave gets married to a guy named Echion. And Echion is an idiot. So they say, Cadmus says, I can't let Echion take over this kingdom when I'm dead. But they have a son, and his name is Pentheus. And Pentheus is great. I love my grandson. So instead of waiting till I die and letting Echion take over, I'm just going to give up my crown now, and I am going to give the crown to Pentheus. So he kind of bypasses Agave there, and Pentheus becomes the king. Problem is, Pentheus is like really young and hot-headed and doesn't make good choices. So now you've got this town that has this young, hot-headed king, and Dionysus, who was born and is the god of wine and theater and fertility, so pretty much sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like he's the hot god. He's the rock star of Mount Olympus. Not later. Later, he turns into the inspiration for the Ghost of Christmas Present and Christmas Carol, and he's like fat and surrounded by food. But when he's young, he's hot. And so Dionysus is up being a god, but because Cadmus threw Semele out, the city of Thebes refuses to acknowledge that Dionysus exists. They have temples for all of the other gods, but no temple of Dionysus. And Dionysus is not happy about this. So one day, old Cadmus and Tiresias are walking through town, and they come up on this man in all these black robes. And they're like, "Can we help you, sir? You don't live here." And he's like, "I come as a priest of Dionysus. I notice you have no temple for Dionysus. You must build one. The gods are angry." And they're like, "No, we don't believe in Dionysus because it was actually all a lie. Because my older daughters, who had no reason to lie to me whatsoever, simply because I never paid attention to them when my youngest daughter was alive, all told me it was a lie. So, nope, we don't believe in him. We are not building him a temple." And the man takes his hood and he throws it off to reveal this beautiful blonde, wavy hair. And he's like, "That's too bad because I am Dionysus and I am going to make you acknowledge me." Out comes Pentheus. Pentheus is like, "Hey, Grandpa, who's the guy in the robes?" And Cadmus is like, "He claims to be Dionysus, but we know that he can't really be a god because we know it was all a lie." And Pentheus is like, "Yeah, you're not a real god. People in Thebes can see through your lie. So you need to get out of town." And he's like, "I shall not leave until you build me a temple." And Pentheus says, "Guards, capture him, put him in the dungeon forever, and while you're at it, cut off that stupid hair." So they shave his head and they throw him in the dungeon. And Dionysus says, "If you won't acknowledge me, I will force you to." And all the women in town leave the city. And they're like, where'd the women go? Cadmus, Tiresias still walking through town, having quite a day already. And this messenger comes running up. And he's like, excuse me, I need to speak to the king." And Cadmus says, "Well, the king is locking up Dionysus right now, so why don't you just tell us? He's my grandson, I'll tell him later." And the messenger's like, "Well, I had another message, but you need to hear this." He's like, "I was walking to town and all of the women just walked out. And your daughter, Agave, was like yelling to them, and out comes this cow. This cow just walks into the field and she's like, 'Bacchae, in the name of Dionysus, I am hungry. Let's feast.' And they all swarm in on this cow and they're like eating this cow alive. The cow's just like, what? And they're like pulling off parts of the cow and eating it, and they're covered in blood, and they're chanting and singing songs about Dionysus." And Cadmus is like, "That's not good." All of a sudden, up walks Dionysus. His hair's grown back. He's just walking through town. They're like, wait, what are you doing here? You're in a dungeon. They shaved your head. We saw it." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what part of God you're not getting. He's like, so why don't we call Pentheus out and try this again? And he's like, Pentheus, Pentheus. And Pentheus doesn't come out. And he's like, oh, the castle's a long way away. Perhaps he can't hear me. I will knock. And he goes to the ground and he hits the ground with his fist, and this crack like starts going from his fist all the way to the castle, and the castle falls. Pentheus comes out and he's like, what the hell, man? That was my castle. And he's like, yes, I need a temple in this town. I have taken away your women. I have taken away your castle. You need to acknowledge me. And Pentheus is like, I can't. We know it's all a lie. Because Pentheus isn't very smart. Cadmus thought he'd be smart, but he's not smart. And Dionysus says, very well. Kneel to me. And Pentheus is like, I think I just made it real clear. I'm not kneeling to you, my guy. Like, no. And Dionysus goes, whew, and the wind starts blowing. And of course, not Dionysus. Dionysus just standing there. The wind's, I mean, his hair still looks perfect. But everyone else blowing in this wind until they all fall to their knees. And he's like, acknowledge that I am a god. Acknowledge that I deserve a temple. And they're like, fine, fine, you're a god. You deserve a temple. And he goes, great. And the wind quits blowing. And he says, now, you need to build me a temple, and I will leave you alone. And they're like, well, bring back the women. And he's like, oh, yes, yes, the women. Before we do that, you need to see what I have these women doing so that you can understand my real power. And Pentheus is like, okay, whatever. Just let's see what the women are doing. He's like, well, you can't be seen by the women as yourself. They're out of control. They're under my power. You need to dress as a woman so that you can go out and infiltrate them. And Pentheus is like, I can't dress like a woman. That's like the worst possible thing for a Greek man to do, which is ironic because they all wore togas. It's like, just need a little lipstick. And they're like, Pentheus, dress like a woman. And Pentheus gets dressed up as a woman, and this is like so degrading to him, but he doesn't realize it because now he's under the spell. And it's like, very well, let us go out and see what the women are doing. They leave. Up comes our poor little messenger again. And he finds Cadmus and Tiresias, and he's like, I don't know how to tell you what I just saw as I was leaving the town. And they're like, what are the women doing now? He's like, Dionysus took Pentheus out to the field. And he said, no, we can't get too close. Climb this tree so that you can see better what is happening. And Pentheus said, okay, I'll climb this tree in heels. And he starts climbing this tree. And Dionysus is like, can you see what they're doing yet? And he's like, I see them dancing around a fire. And he's like, go higher. Look at what they're doing. And Pentheus goes higher and he's like, yes, I see them. They're covered in blood and dirt and they're like writhing. How are we going to get them back? And Dionysus says, just stay there. And then he booms his voice and he's like, Bacchae, it is I, Dionysus, your chosen god. In this tree, I have captured a lion. Kill it for me. And the women all come running up and they start shaking the tree and the tree falls. And Pentheus is like trying to like scurry away, and they're like, look, it's the lion. And they go up and they get him, and just like that poor cow earlier, because that wasn't foreshadowing, they like start ripping him up. And their leader, Agave, grabs Pentheus's head, rips it off of his body, grabs a branch of the tree, and puts his head on it. And she says, Bacchae, I have killed a lion. My son will be so proud to see how strong his mother is. Cadmus and Tiresias are like, oh, I see. And the messenger's like, yeah, she's coming back. She's got his head on a stick. She thinks it's a lion. This is bad. And Agave comes walking in, followed by the other women, and she's like, Pentheus, Pentheus, come look what your mother has done. And she sees Cadmus, and he can't even look at her. And Tiresias is like, I don't have to look at her, I'm blind. And and then up comes Dionysus, and Agave's like, Dionysus, look what I have done in your name. I have killed a lion. I need to show my son. And Dionysus goes, Agave, look at your lion. Now, you know, no actress, no self-respecting interpreter of Euripides is just going to go, no, she's got to look at her shoulder. She's got to look all the way down her arm, all the way to her hand, which is now covered in blood, up the stick. And if you pass someone who doesn't have the most blood-curdling scream, you have missed an opportunity, because she drops that stick and she's screaming and she's like, what have I done? And she goes up to the head and she picks it up and she's holding it like a baby. And she's like, it's all right. It's all right. We'll fix it. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. Cadmus walks up behind her and he puts his hand on her shoulder and he's like, Agave, we can't fix this. Pentheus is dead. This is what we get for denying the gods. And Dionysus says, yes. Remember this as you build my temple. I mean, he uses more words than that because it's the Greeks and they're like poets and whatever. But that's pretty much what he says, is he's like, remember this while you're building my friggin' temple. And that's the play of the day. People performed this happy little story about a family that just had a misunderstanding. They did it at Shakespeare in the Park like 8-10 years ago. Yeah, it's a fun one. All right, see you next time, and we'll start talking about Oedipus Rex.